All right, let's take some notes today. So pens and pencils and papers and all of that. So we are going to be talking specifically, we've already been talking about the Renaissance. We're going to talk specifically about science and technology today. I'm just going to say tech because I don't want to write that all out. Okay, so according to medieval scientists, everything, all matter, was made of 4 elements. Anybody know what those elements were? I'm coming closer. They were the 4 elements, according to the scientists of medieval times, so prior to the Renaissance, were air, earth, fire, and, any guesses? Water, yes. So they believe that everything in the universe was composed of combinations of these things. And that they also believed that space, or as they called it, the cosmos was a whole lot of spheres, like a globe shape, right? But then there were concentric, so they got bigger and bigger as you went farther and farther out. And the earth was at the, so we're talking about the cosmos, or space was what we call it, are these concentric spheres. Concentric meaning they start small and get bigger. And the spheres rotated around each other, which is why the stars moved. Turn it up just a little bit. Does that help, Julie? Okay. This is how space was made up, and the Earth was you have all these spheres, right? And the stars and the planets are out here, and right in the dead center, what's in the very center? Earth, right? They believe that Earth, you still can't see it, can you, Carter?
No, I can see it.
Okay, lean back. So Earth was the center, and Earth was heavy and stable. It just stayed right there. So, and so motion in the heavens was either perfectly circular or it was always downward, which is what they believe the Earth was always pulling down. They believe, oh, and I actually have some pictures for you. The Earth also had just 3 land masses. There was Europe, Asia, and Africa. They didn't know anything about this part of the world. So here's a picture of the concentric sphere model that they believe to be the case. Oh. Let me show the video real quick, and then I'll give it back to you, Carter. So video people, there's the concentric spheres of the cosmos, and there's
the bottom picture?
one of the first world maps. That's what the bottom picture is.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
That one's for you. All right, and they also believed that human beings, which were the main thing of all creation in the medieval mind, we're kind of looking back to the medieval times. So humans were the point of all creation, as far as they were concerned. And humans, like we had the 4 elements, the humans were also composed of 4 humors, they called it. Which was what circulated inside your body, be it liquid or gaseous. And the 4 humors of all human beings were black bile, yellow bile, kind of gross, blood, and phlegm. And why do you think they chose those 4 things? Say, what?
Things that come out of you, I guess.
Right, these are all kind of things that come out of the human body, right? If you have dead tissue, you get black bile. If you're just sick, you get yellow. Obviously, you bleed. And phlegm, right? Well, the phlegm. Yeah, right. Pulling up that phlegm, right? And that your health actually depended on how balanced these were in your body. And it's why we get the medical treatment that actually started in medieval times of bleeding people when it was believed that your blood was causing you problems, was making you sick, or was making you crazy, or because you had too much blood, or not, like your blood was contaminated. And so they would either cut you and bleed you, or even better, they could put leeches on you, which would suck the blood out of you. And who did? Who? And that started back, even before medieval times. They were trying to use leeches to get out the bad humors from people. But actually, George Washington, all the way up to the 1700s, right? He pretty much died from blood loss because they bled him so much trying to get him well from whatever illness he had, that he basically died from that. So, and they believed that the cosmos space was all alive, and that there was a universal human consciousness, and that people interacted in ways not just with their voices and things, but also in how they thought. You stop taking notes, Lex? You all right? Okay. So, but then this is kind of all classical Greek thought mixed with Christian thought. You get all these ideas. People come up with things reading what other people have written and looking at the phenomenon. But if you didn't read or write books, or you didn't have any kind of education, there was also a lot of strong belief in magic and good and evil spirits and witchcraft and predicting the future. That was believed by pretty much everyone in the Western world. And the church, meaning the Catholic Church, because that was the only one at this point unless you were Jewish, the church really wanted you to worry more about your faith and the sacraments. If you know anything about the Catholic Church, there are certain sacraments that you have to perform during your lifetime if you want to go to heaven. And they include baptism and First Holy Communion and marriage, confirmation and marriage, and the last rites, meaning a priest has to pray over you as you die. So this was a very strong Christian world beliefs, and that's what the Catholic Church, and also the praying to Mary, who was a saint, Mary, the mother of Jesus, where you're supposed to pray for her and she would take care of you. But even though this is what the church teaches, they also commonly believed in the occult. And because of that, because they actually had doctrine about witchcraft and the influence of Satan, the church became involved in things like witch hunts, where, like I said, it was dangerous to be a woman with a cat, a widow with a cat, because they might accuse you of being a witch and torture you in various ways, kill you if they were convinced. And it also gave them justification to do what were called pogroms against Jewish people, which basically meant that the authorities would go out and harass and usually force Jewish people out of their homes, wherever they were living, and they would have to go somewhere else on the basis of the doctrine that the Jews were influenced by Satan to kill Jesus. And they called them Christ killers, although the Romans did that, not the Christians, but, truth didn't really matter in this case. Jewish people were widely hated and feared, and the fact is that it's still true today. It's called, because the Jews are a Semitic people, they call it anti-Semitism, and anti-Semitism is alive and well in the world and in America. And it's part of white supremacy, that you're against people of color, but also against Jews. to me, it's kind of baffling why in this day and age people would be anti-Semitic still. I mean, you would never know a person was Jewish unless they told you that they were. But it's just, people have lots of reasons for hatred. So, but we start getting people disagreeing with the church based on this new growth of science and observational science, and then we'll eventually move into experimental science. So we start with the observation. Oh, I hate this board. I wish they put that up on the wall. Observation, and then during the Renaissance, there's going to be a great growth in experimentation. And science as we know it now, where you have a hypothesis, you test it, which can lead to a theory, if the hypothesis proves true, and then the theory gets more testing, and if the theory proves to be true with all kind of experimentation, then it becomes a scientific law. Okay, this starts to develop during the Renaissance period. And so traditional science starts to be transformed. Can you see? And we have some of the world's great scientists that we still know of them today. Everybody got it all down? I want to erase it until everybody gets it down. Got it? Okay. Who can name a great scientist of the Renaissance? Well, he was more of an explorer than a scientist, but he was a great person of the Renaissance. Scientists. Galileo, for sure.
I was like, it starts with a G.
Isaac Newton. The crazy thing about Newton is he figured out through experimentation most of the laws of physics that we still understand today. So he was all about physics.
Our GPS pronounces Newtown Road as Newton Road.
There you go. Galileo was, of course, an inventor and a scientist, but best known for his inventions. And then another one that was very important was Copernicus. And Copernicus was the guy who became known for heliocentric theory of the universe. Anybody know what helio means in Latin?
Sun.
The sun. So it's a sun-centered theory. Copernicus quite controversially said that the sun is the center of the universe, not the earth. Or the cosmos, the center of the cosmos. And it got him in big trouble because I talked about the medieval times that the most important thing in the cosmos is human beings, right? That's their theory. Are you taking notes, Lex? All right. Triangles. And Copernicus said, no, that doesn't make any sense when you observe what's going on in the heavens. It doesn't make sense that the earth would be at the center. It's obvious if you observe what's going on and don't just believe something without the observation that the earth is traveling around the sun. It got him arrested and ultimately executed for this theory of this heliocentric universe, because it was saying that humans are not the center of the universe, which is true. They are not. We are not the center of the universe. But the church believed it to be true. The church taught it to be true, and so it went directly against church doctrine. And that's why Copernicus got in so much trouble. But what's really happening in the Renaissance is what we call a paradigm shift. Oh, excuse me. Human being. All right, a paradigm. Anybody know what a paradigm is? It's not a pair of dimes. It's a paradigm. Anybody know what a paradigm is? Anybody ever heard that word before? A paradigm is an idea that your belief system is built on. Okay, so in the Renaissance, we have a paradigm shift. This idea that humans are the center of the universe is a paradigm that people held because the church taught it. Now people are shifting, recognizing that the sun, as far as they knew, they don't know how big the universe actually is, right? The shift is that now the sun is at the center. Well, what could this mean? The church thought it meant that maybe people would start challenging what they taught, their authority. They might challenge the scriptures. And so they tried to suppress it as long as they could. But the thing is, there was a very important invention during the Renaissance that kept these ideas from being suppressed, which was, of course, Gutenberg's printing press. I wish I had $1 for every time I kicked this easel. Johannes Gutenberg in Germany, if you didn't already guess that. He didn't create it, he modernized the printing press. Printing has been around, block printing has been around in China for a long, long time. Also during this period of time, a new kind of ink is developed that works better on the printing press. It's developed from a kind of painting during the arts revolution in Florence. So all these different parts of the Renaissance period, they kind of all come together for a lot of these things to all happen at one time in different parts. And so with the printing press, Gutenberg, people are printing books, and books are being spread. And as the books are spread, people are learning this new science, and they're learning that the science is tested. It's not just observational. Or they've done more advanced observations than they had, rather than just assuming the way things were. You know, the sun rises and the sun sets, right? So the sun must be moving. And even the study in art of the idea of perspective and how you make a painting based on perspective is starting to teach, well, maybe our perspective isn't what we think it is. Maybe we're the ones moving, not the sun moving. So a lot of kind of mind-opening ideas. So we get the paradigm shift. And we get the, like I said, scientific method where we have a hypothesis and we test it and we develop a theory and we test the theory and we try to see if it's a scientific law. Does it apply every single time? And like I said, the printing press is everybody's getting the same information. We're also getting mathematics is undergoing changes and revolutionary thinking away from everything that the ancient Greeks taught, but also like Pythagoras, who did, if you've done geometry, the Pythagorean theorem, who kind of had this idea of a harmonious geometric universe. And Copernicus knew about that, and because he'd studied the ancient Greeks, and so it kind of fed into this idea. So while some of the ancient Greek ideas weren't correct, they did lead the Renaissance scientists into new places. Okay, so in the Renaissance role of modern science is the idea of technology. Technology is really the great era of Renaissance. The Renaissance is a great era of technology and advancement as they, move away from the medieval ideas and perceptions, and they start to kind of push things to their limits and try new things. We get a lot of inventions, and of course, we know that Galileo and Leonardo were both inventing things already, and it just moves forward as they begin to discover better and new ways to make things that make things work better or in different ways. Now, the fact that there was a lot of warfare going on between different Renaissance states, we get an advancement in technology of warfare. Okay, and with that, the Chinese had already invented gunpowder about a century before, no, more than that, 5 centuries before. So gunpowder is already out there, but in the Renaissance, they start discovering new ways to use it. One of the other advances is metallurgy. They began to work with different metals to make them stronger, more withstanding of an explosion. So we start to get, used to be the main weapon of Europe was a trebuchet. Do you know what a trebuchet is? It's basically a big machine that you can put projectiles like big stones and things in. You pull it back. It's a little bit like a slingshot, right? But it's a big thing. You pull it back under pressure and then you let it go and it'll fling stones really far.
Isn't that basically a catapult?
Like a catapult, right? It's very much like a catapult, but the original one was called a trebuchet because it was French originally. And so, but this idea that we can somehow use this and this together to throw objects even further by using an explosion, and you get development of things like cannons. And eventually, late Renaissance, you get actual guns and weapons made with guns that are strong enough that they don't blow up. Because it's not really good to have a weapon in your hand that blows up in your hands. So the metallurgy was very important to make good, strong stocks and strong, you call the part that it comes out of. Oh gosh, I just lost my mind. Yes, the barrel. Thank you. Every now and then, those words just go. So you have all of this technology, the use of artillery, like I said. But the use of artillery, some of that, you get this idea, you have mathematical calculations that you can actually calculate how far an object of a certain weight will travel given the amount of force you put on it. So the idea of motion of bodies in space is another part of science that's growing. We also see a great resurgence and preoccupation with alchemy in this time. And alchemy is, of course, trying to take an unvaluable, or what we call a base metal, and make it into a valuable metal, gold or silver. And this has been happening for a long, long time. For centuries and millennia, people have been trying to do this. But because of all this metallurgy work, they start getting these new ideas of other things they can try to turn lead into gold. That was the main one. No one's ever done it. There's no process yet that will do it. So they worked really, really hard at it for a really long time. And let's see, oh, there we go. Okay. So we've got all of this kind of science going on. Newton, who basically laid out, Sir Isaac Newton, laid out the laws of physics. And what Newton, along with some of our other scientists like Leonardo and Galileo, what they knew was that almost everything can be described with numbers. It's like the world is orderly in this way. So with calculations, using numbers, you can describe almost anything in our world. That's one of the things that Newton discovered. So Newton lays out, based on things like calculus, he lays out the laws of motion with math. If you ever take physics to me is one of the most interesting things. The laws of motion, how things move, what affects the way things move, how the constancy of certain motion, no matter what you do, the motion will remain the same. Fascinating stuff. The thing is, though, if you take physics, it's just math. It's all mathematical formulas to predict motion or to describe motion. That's mostly what physics is. I had this strange dream in high school that I would be an astronaut. Then I discovered you had to study physics. And I took physics, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. I'm just not good enough at math. I'm not bad at math, but I'm careless. I'm the queen of careless errors. So you don't want me, like, calculating for your shuttle launch. It's not the person you want doing that. So, but I just have always been fascinated with physics and Isaac Newton, how he just described all of these things and came up with this math to describe it all. He was really, really a brilliant mind.
I wonder how he did it. Like, he just sat in his room and just thought about it.
He actually went out and did stuff. He would take a ramp and he would roll things down the ramp. And there's the famous story.
One.
What?
The apple thing.
No, not the apple thing. I was going to talk about the dropping things
That's
from.
lots of bread.
The gravity, right, dropping things from the tower, you drop a feather, you
Oh.
drop this, they travel, and then they hit the ground at the same time, those famous experiments. But I'm not gonna go into that because I'm not a physicist, so. I want to be a physicist. But like I said, you have the printing press printing all these ideas. And now thousands of books are circulating around Europe with all these scientific ideas. So they're all being tested and new things are being discovered. And so it's one of the reasons that we call the Renaissance the rebirth. This idea of all this knowledge that is being born into the world. The other thing that's happening in the world, though, okay, I'm going to take a 5-minute break because you've been listening for 30 minutes, and that's a long time to listen. So we're just going to take a break, and you can draw, or you can just talk, or get your brain recharged for a minute.